Hello again, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Make Mental podcast. Today we have on another extraordinary guest, and I'm very excited for this one. I had a whole intro planned out, but I think I'm going to switch it and kind of just talk kind of off the cuff. I was going to have this whole like giant basketball family, this, that, and the other thing, but I am sure Jamie is beaten to death by that. And that is not why we are here. We are here to talk about her and her mental health journey and all that she has learned, which I'm sure a lot of it has come through basketball. But anyone who knows the name, it's kind of impossible to separate from basketball at this point. But we are so blessed to have on Jamie Boeheim. Thank you for joining us on the Make Mental podcast.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to and honored to be here. Thank you so much, Caleb, for, reaching out to me. And I'm, just thankful to have this opportunity to kind of speak about my story in hopes of inspiring other people.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? If we can figure out something ourselves or go through a life experience and we can either help someone else through it, kind of give them some support afterwards, or hope that we can help them before some life experiences happen, some of the bad ones. Sometimes you have to experience them, but if we can ease that experience or just share our wisdom, or sometimes just be that listening ear, that's what it's all about. So I'm excited to kind of learn a little bit more about you and your journey and what has brought you to this very moment. So I was curious though, how would you introduce yourself to the podcast? Because if it's not basketball like we'd expect, how would you tell us about yourself? Who is Jamie Boeheim?
First and foremost, I would say I'm a social worker. I'm someone who, in my current day to day life, works with people struggling with mental health. I would say that's a big part of who I am, a social worker. But I'm also, a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a significant other. And really, so much of me now is not basketball, but the reflection of kind of what basketball has done for me. And so much of it is really where I am today and has led me to this career. And first, yeah, I would just say I'm someone who's very dedicated to the mental health world and, really just taking my past and helping other people in similar situations.
Yes, social work, for those of us who might not know, since the mental health world sometimes has, I like to call it alphabet soup with what comes after the professionals' names, right? You have, I think it's LCSW would be your letters, but then there's so many, depending if you're a counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist, a like it goes on and on. What what is social work for
Hmm.
you? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I am currently, I just received my MSW from Syracuse, so I'm a master of social work. I will eventually this summer take a licensing exam to be an LMSW, licensed master social worker. I currently work with children and teens and their families, mostly with, an array of mental health issues and presenting problems. Um, and, that's kind of the population I'm at right now. I would originally, when I first got into wanting to pursue a mental health career, I was really looking into sports psychology and wanting to work with athletes. And I definitely still think that's an area I'm going to go into. However, social work, it's a 2-year master's program versus going and getting, you know, um, going to med school and kind of having to figure out how to get into sports with a PhD. So that's kind of what led me to social work, is just being able to do what I want quicker. And so, yeah, right now I'm really working with the general population, children and teens and families, but I would really love to get into sports psychology.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too with mental health emerging so strongly in the sports world. I'm not sure of the regulations that will be in place, right? Maybe that is something that you can get into at the professional, collegiate, or even high school level now. Because as we were talking before this, we just see mental health issues present themselves at such younger and younger ages. Maybe that is something that is in the future for you, even without having to go back for more schooling, because that, I mean, we will if we have to, but we're at that age right now where it's like I am just done with school. I feel like, um, Was this always
Yeah.
your dream to be a social worker and just be someone who helps in general, or did that kind of when did that come onto the scene for you?
So I think a variety of factors really played into where I've ended up in my career. From a young age, I had the privilege of being able to witness my parents firsthand help the community and you know help children and people with developmental needs and the list just goes on and seeing the impact you can make not only with having resources but it really just starts with caring and wanting to create that change and I saw that in them every day. I went to a lot of the Jim and Julie Boeheim Foundation events and was able to, myself really be involved. And that was always in the back of my mind and knowing I love people and I just love being in the community and relating to other people. Um, and so when I went to the University of Rochester, I was mainly interested in becoming a journalist or a sports broadcaster. That's kind of what I wanted to do. And I just ended up being a psychology major because they didn't have a communication school. And so I think, my childhood, kind of seeing the Jim and Julie Boeheim Foundation coupled with what I went through in my basketball career in my freshman year really just set the stage for me wanting to go into a field where, I could help people similar to me and I could use kind of the skills that I developed in my childhood um, to make a change. And so I think after my freshman year, when I quit basketball, I really was like, okay, I need to start looking into counseling. I think I want to be a therapist. And that's kind of when, like I said, I got into the sports psychology route. I talked to the sports psychologist at U of R at the time. And so I kind of just had that seed in my mind that that's where I wanted to go. Um, and so eventually I applied to Syracuse I was originally applying for a licensed mental health counselor. And I ended up switching to social work just because I felt it was a better fit for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful and so much I think to unpack there. And I want to start with your parents. Obviously, they play a massive role in your life and in the community at Syracuse and honestly, New York
Hmm.
in general. What have they meant to you throughout this whole process? Because, at least personally speaking, I feel like I went through a period where my parents were everything and then I didn't want to see them and now they're everything again. Was that the case for you? And
Mhm.
if so, like, how were they along the way and what's that relationship like?
Yeah, I think, just looking at developmental psychology, as adolescents and especially in high school, we kind of start having that phase of life where we're kind of breaking away from our family and developing our own identity and exploring, maybe how our interests and values differ from our families. And so, like you've said, when I went to Rochester, I think I was kind of like, okay, I'm good with the space. I'm happy. And my basketball career and those struggles I think really brought me much closer to my parents at the time. And I remember coming home and just being like, I don't feel like myself. I just need to kind of be around my family and remind myself of who I am. And so I think our relationship then was especially critical. And only as time has gone on, I think especially now, we're more close than ever. And even throughout my mental health career, they've been nothing but supportive and, really just helping me kind of reach my goals and my dreams. And um, yeah, I think we have a super close relationship. And I'm thankful that, during that time, so many people are quick to kind of assume that my dad especially was, upset about the decision and kind of wanted to hold me back from quitting. And, in reality, that wasn't what it was at all. And they've really always just supported whatever I wanted to do. And I think the only hesitations they've had have been in my best interest in terms of wanting me to have friends and wanting me to be in a social group. And it really, the concerns they had were never about basketball. And so I just couldn't be more thankful for how things kind of ended up with that.
And I think that's one of the scariest parts, right? Is the expectations we think other people have for us and
Hmm.
filling those shoes. Again, personally, it's like the moment I decided to walk in my own shoes instead of try and fill those of others was the moment that was like, yeah, this is life is pretty good, right? I'm I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about a lot of things, but we'll get one at a time here. I'm not going to throw them all at once. Your decision to attend U of R, you said you wanted to go into journalism broadcasting, but then you mentioned it wasn't necessarily the major that they had. Did you choose U of R because basketball? And then if you did, why did you decide to stay when basketball was no longer in the picture? Go Global is a free flowing technology company that handcrafts, embellishes, and manufactures garments and accessories. Designed on the principles of people, places, and possibilities, Go Global reimagines fashion and is inspired by you, the people of the world.
So, just thinking back to high school, I was on a really competitive AAU team. And I think then was really when I kind of started to have some internal conflict about whether basketball was really something I wanted to pursue as a collegiate career. But I just kind of did it because, at the time, that's what I thought I should do. And I always, had kind of a foot out of the basketball world. I had some thoughts about maybe, this might not be the track for me. But U of R was such a good academic school and it was Division III, and, it was kind of what I was looking for at the time. And so I applied to U of R and kind of random. I applied to Villanova University, just as kind of another option that wasn't related to basketball. Um, but I really, I just ended up going to U of R because it was, like I said, a great academic school. And it was really, the only option I had for basketball. I think a lot of people assume that I was probably recruited. And, people always ask me if I was recruited by SU. And I only had one offer. And Division III, you can't really offer it. I paid full tuition anyway to go. Um, so I think, I ended up going there and I really loved the team. I think such a big part of sports is the people you can meet through it. And I just adored my team and my teammates. And I feel like, even just on a side note, I hear so many people say who are going through issues with mental health in sports, I'm going to keep doing this because of my friends, and I'm going to stay in this because they are. And so I really think so much of my freshman year, I relied on them and we really just had each other's backs. And so after I quit, I became a manager for my sophomore year because I wanted to stay connected with the girls. And I just think the relationships I built, I wouldn't be able to make somewhere else. And I didn't want to lose that, and what I had. And on top of that, just U of R being such a great academic school, I wanted to get my degree from there, and I wanted to stay and still have a relationship with the basketball team. And so ultimately, it worked out, and I wasn't a manager my junior year, but that sophomore year being a manager was a huge stepping stone for me, and it really helped me kind of process the fact that I wasn't on the team anymore while still being able to be there.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly that the community that sports provides us with is oftentimes the strongest community that we'll ever have or experience, and we'll have it for life. Honestly, it's not. I'm sure you still talk to the girls on your team or the women on your team today, and I'm sure they're your best friends, and they still influence your dumb life decisions. But that's probably a different podcast. Um, that I always think that that line of, oh well, we're in this together is tricky, right? Because while it could be true, if you're struggling through it together, what does that word struggle mean? Is it you don't want to do I probably can't. Let me choose better words. Would you like to do the ladders during practice up and down the court? Can you get through the hill runs together? The fitness, is it the weight room that you're struggling through together, or is it abuse that you're struggling through together? Is it um I don't know, maybe you're just not in the right mental space, a handful of you on the team and you're all struggling through it together. Okay, cool, still do it together, but don't ignore the reason behind the struggle. And I think a lot of times, I don't think it's necessarily anyone's fault. I just think it's cultural. We just say struggle through it together and not really address what the struggle is. So we're proud of you over here at Make Mental for actually digging into that struggle and taking a deeper look to so you could help yourself. Because while you are in a community and while you are on a team, you can't be the best member of that community or for that team if you yourself aren't taken care of. What was that moment of realization like? Obviously, I'll say it one last time here, and I promise I'll stop saying it. Basketball is huge in your life. What was that moment like when you're just like, you mentioned a little bit in high school, but ultimately that decision of like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to play competitively anymore. Why don't I? Like, I know I love the sport. I know I'm supposed to love the sport. Everyone like, what are the thoughts going on in your head at that moment?
I remember the day that I decided to quit and when I really just kind of pulled the plug on the situation. I had actually, it was the morning of our fitness test. So we had to run a mile and I did it. I passed. And I remember going up to my dorm at the time where I lived with five other girls on the team. And those were kind of the people that, if I had continued playing, those are the people I would have done it for. And I think I just was like, my first thought was like, I've had enough. I just want to put myself first right now, and I don't really care what anyone else thinks. I remember sitting on my balcony and I, made a couple phone calls, none of which were to my family. It was more of my friends at the time. One of my friends from high school, she went to Hobart and actually quit after her freshman year. So she was someone that I really relied on because I really just felt so isolated through those thoughts. And I think the thoughts I had during the summer leading up to the up to the season, I just was like, this isn't for me. I know I might let some people down, or, really a lot of my worries were about what other people would think of me, and how people would perceive me, especially it being a Boeheim. I only made it through one season, which wasn't a good season at all. And, what are people going to say about me? Is this going to affect whether people think I'm cool? And I think back then I was just so consumed by other people's thoughts that I didn't really create a space for my own. And I think, when you do so much for other people after so long, you kind of lose who you are and what you want in life, and you let other people's goals kind of determine your own. And for the first time I realized, that morning on my porch, that I had a say in what I wanted, and it was my life, that I was living the day to day, you know, horribleness. It wasn't anyone else. It was really just me. And um, I think I just was really empowered by myself in that moment to just kind of, like I said, pull the plug and do it for myself.
Let me tell you about the Sleep With Me podcast. If you struggle to get a good night's sleep like me, I need you to check out this podcast. Each episode is crafted to help you unwind, featuring gentle storytelling designed to ease your mind and guide you into restful slumber. I kid you not. Whenever I'm anxious in bed at night, I turn it on, and before I know it, it's morning, and I'm as refreshed as I've ever been. I am not sure how it works, but trust me when I tell you, it does. So, join me and thousands of others who have turned restless nights into peaceful sleep with the help of the Sleep With Me podcast. Yeah, and I think, again, you hit the nail on the head. When you do so much for others, you do start to forget who you are, and not like in common sense, not like your name or like what you, and sometimes what you enjoy. Honestly, some people have struggle with that, but I think when you put yourself first in the most like authentic and genuine way possible, life has a way of sorting itself out. And it's easy to sit and say,
Mm-hmm.
on this end of a mental health battle, um, but if that's one thing I could tell myself if I went back to when my struggles started, is like, look, get those people in your corner who you know will be there whether you do your sport or not, or whether you're struggling or not. Like those people who you could call at 3 a.m., get them, keep them in your corner,
Mm-hmm.
and then just have them help you keep yourself at the center of your priorities when you're figuring this out. And yes, that feels extremely selfish, especially to people who love to serve the community when it's just in your nature. What was that feeling of selfishness for you, and how did you remind yourself that you had to take care of you so that you could be there for others again?
I think I I think I just mainly, the feeling I had was just letting people down. And I think, it wasn't, even just my parents, it was my coaches, it was my teammates, it was, my friends, and even, in some ways myself, letting myself down and just not being able to kind of get through like I thought I should. And I just, I felt, you know, I think it is a selfish decision. And oftentimes on the backside of that, it's a very isolating, feeling and thing to go through. Um, I think so many times I was carrying a weight that was way too heavy, and I didn't really have many outlets to share because I didn't want to kind of put it out there that I was thinking about quitting. I really just wanted to keep that to myself. And so going through that alone was really isolating and feeling like I was going to let people down, and that even myself, I couldn't prove it to myself that I could make it through, and, just kind of feeling, defeated by that. And so I think when I, decided to quit that day, like I said, I felt really empowered. And I think, if I didn't have that moment of empowerment, I may not have quit till the next year or till whenever that feeling came about. But I just, somewhere inside of me, I just kind of, a fire was lit and I was ready to go. And it didn't feel so isolating anymore. I honestly started to
Mm.
feel some relief, even just saying the words out loud. Like, I think I'm going to quit today. I think I'm going to go tell my coach today. And it was really just, I think it was a beautiful moment and a beautiful day. And I still think about it a lot. And especially, in today, whenever I am really not sure of something, I'm much more quick. I'm much more quick to do what I want to do, rather than thinking about, what other people want me to do. And kind of like you said in our conversation earlier, you have to go through that experience to learn those skills and learn the importance of valuing yourself. And so that isolation and kind of sadness went to being really empowered and resilient and ready for, to take on whatever was going to come with me quitting.
Yeah, I like to ask a lot of our guests this question, but I think I'll rephrase it for you. Do you think it takes a big moment, a big life decision in order to get that skill set of self-empowerment, or do you think you can gather that from maybe smaller moments of that require a lot of self-reflection?
For me, I think that was a really big moment for me. And I think it did change my ability to empower myself and do what I want, because it was a fear that I lived with my whole life. Kind of not playing basketball, not having basketball in my life, being the only one in my family not to play. I think that was something that I always had in the back of my mind of knowing I would eventually have to face, because I knew I wasn't going to make it through the 4 years, even when I committed to U of R, because I wasn't 100% in it. I really never was. And so I think when you face something that you've kind of been dreading your whole life and expecting to happen your whole life, it's big enough to kind of affect every single moment that happens that is similar to that moment, but may not be so big anymore, or such a big deal anymore. So I would say that for me was definitely a bit more important for my growth, and especially as an adult now, being able to say no, and just really focusing on my path and where I want to be. Um, but that's not to say that those moments aside from that, during the season my freshman year, where I would have to go to practice and I really didn't want to go, and I was anxious, couldn't sleep the whole night, those little moments I think are what eventually, getting through those moments is what eventually, really helped me just say I'm done. I think it was good practice for me, and it did, instill some power inside of me.
Yeah, I appreciate you for saying that the little moments that lead up to the big moments, even though they sometimes feel like the big moment themselves, they do prepare you to make that decision. And it's funny that you say that. I guess I didn't even realize it in myself. But for me, toxic empathy is something that I struggle with a lot. Um, and I guess I'd rather struggle with it than not have it. Um, but it did stem from early on after I've been working with my therapist. And I'm like, wait a minute, this little life moment that's should like, okay, so this is probably, I don't know, how old was I? 7. I don't know. We're at the mall in Syracuse, Destiny USA now, but it was Carousel at the time. And there was like a basketball store. There was like the Villa, I think. Don't ask me how I remember that. In between the new section and the old section, we were there with my grandparents. I'm an 8-year old, right? So if they offer to buy me something, of course I'm going to say yes. But my two older brothers said no. And of course, they're being two older brothers. They're like, why do you say yes? Like, you don't always have to tell grandma and grandpa yes. Of course, they want to buy you things. Like, you're so selfish, blah, blah, blah. And it's not their fault. I mean, they're being older brothers, right? They're not much older themselves, like 9 and 11, right? So they're still kids. For some reason, I still remember that moment. And when I go to make larger decisions where other people, whether it's money or feelings, whatever's on the line, for some reason that moment still pops into my head. Do you have a moment like that from your childhood where you think back and you're like, wow, actually, this moment has been building up for potentially years and years? Or is it something that kind of, like you said, was right at the end of high school and you just kind of, basketball had kind of run its course for you?
Let me think. Um,
Because I'd never thought about that before when you were saying like the little moments, as you described them, to get up and go to practice or to push through the sleepless nights. And yes, that still happened to me, but I was thinking, like, when was the first time I was told I was selfish, even though I didn't feel like I was, you know?
yeah, no, I definitely, I just think, kind of just getting through, especially at the end of my high school career and, mainly during AAU, just kind of getting through every season and just being like low key a little miserable. I think, those were kind of just really important moments that kind of contributed to, eventually down the line when I would quit and proving to myself more so the fact that like I was resilient and I could get through those moments. And I know, like, I was really nervous and afraid of what life would be like after I quit. But I mean, I knew I would be able to get through that if I could get through the last, 3 years of playing that, I was really struggling. But I think, if anything, no one told me I was selfish. It was something I put on myself. And I think I made myself feel like, you know, not necessarily that I was selfish, but that, yeah, I guess selfish and not, sticking it out to see kind of what would happen and for my friends and for my social life and for, my academic career. But I think I ultimately kind of got over that, and I think maybe that took a long time to do, um, but eventually I did get over that.
Hey, sports moms, want to stay comfortable and stylish while cheering on your team? Introducing Chillin' Sports Mom. Their fashionable, breathable apparel is designed specifically for you, ideal for busy game days and practices. With waterproof jackets and chic totes, you'll never have to compromise between style and comfort because you deserve to look fantastic while supporting your superstars. Visit chillinsportsmom.com today to check it out. That's CHILLIN sportsmom.com. Yeah, I want to focus again on the point of, like you said, those little moments, whether it was your whole life or whether it was a year, a month, even a day, because little moments in a day can add up to your decision making. Um, I'm going to try my best to make it relatable to athletes here. I always say you have to win the game at hand to make it to the championship. Or if you're an academic, you have to do the homework assignment or study to do well on the test or put yourself in the best position possible. Do you think, looking back on it, or I guess not even looking back on it, would you suggest to future healers and strugglers, if you will, to use those moments as like a practice point? Because you said you weren't sure what you wanted to do once basketball was done. Like that's a valid fear, right? When you're sleeping or when you're sleepless at 3 in the morning and anxious, would you suggest to someone to use those 5 minutes where you're wide awake and remind themselves what they like outside of their sport? Use it as a moment to prepare for the future, right? To calm yourself back down. Or yeah, maybe you don't want to go to the practice today because it's fitness or you just don't feel like going. But once you get out of school, it's going to be like that for your job. And while some jobs will let you take the day off, others won't. How would you how would you suggest using those anxious moments to prepare yourself for that final decision, which for you ended up with no more basketball?
I think in my mind, a lot of those anxious moments where I went and kind of what made me feel better was knowing that it wasn't going to be like this forever. And I wasn't, if I could get through this moment now and kind of just practicing those skills of calming myself down and looking forward to the future and kind of understanding, Jamie, it's not always going to be this way. You're a freshman in college. A lot of people, don't have the opportunity to even play collegiate sports, and you're kind of just here by, a whim. I kind of got lucky. I got my foot into the door at U of R, and I think really just taking those moments and really when I was super anxious, just telling myself, this isn't going to last forever. Having those positive self-talk and affirmations, you can do this, you can get through this, you're strong, you're brave. And I think that's really when I started to look myself in the mirror every day and tell myself that. And I still do that to this day. I believe in, positive affirmations and positive self-talk. That's one of the two biggest things I teach my clients I work with. And um, I would really just tell everyone, be kind to yourself. You're important. Think about yourself as a child. Think about them. And when you treat yourself like crap and talk down on yourself, you can start to believe those things if you keep saying it so many times. So kind of, learning to change those negative thoughts into more positive ones, and, really just restructuring the negativity that we feed into ourselves. Because once you start doing that, you can get good at it, and it's something that you just comes, second nature. You don't really even have to think about it. You just are like, I got this. I can do this. And I proved it to myself that I could. And I just really would, yeah, recommend when you are in those really dark moments, get up, try to get a sip of water, do something different, and tell yourself you can do it. um, yeah.
Yeah, I smiled for a lot of that because you brought up so many good points, but also so many good memories for me that honestly I haven't thought about in a while. When you're talking about positive affirmations, I had some trouble sleeping for a while, not like insomnia, just falling asleep. Like it would take me probably an hour to fall asleep, which isn't abnormal, but it was for me. And with my therapist, I just worked on the simple switch of just smiling at myself in the mirror before I went to bed. And I don't know what gets released when you smile, what hormone, but there's got to be something because every night before I go to bed, I'll smile in the mirror. And if it's not genuine, I'll wait there until it is a genuine smile. Like, hey, we made it through another day. Just do a quick self reflection if I don't feel like journaling. Just those small moments that can make the world of difference, right? When they used to be those anxious moments for me, anytime because I know the warning signs now, anytime I feel them coming on, I just go do something small that no one has to know about that just changed the course of my night or my day, depending on when I choose to smile at myself in the mirror. And it's kind of funny. Like, if you think about it, you're just standing there smiling in the mirror. So then eventually it turns into a genuine smile. And you're just like, what are you doing, dude? Why are you smiling in the mirror? But it works, right? However you get yourself to do it. And the second reason I was smiling so much is because you brought up the younger version of self. That is something I don't like to do often. Um, I'm blessed that my family took a ton of family videos when we were younger, and my mom's actually getting them off those old like little tapes now and putting them on USBs for us. So she called me in the room the other day, and I was playing with a little dog when our family lake house was being redone, and I just smiled and almost teared up because for the longest time, my thought process was, why can't I feel like that little boy right now? Like he's just happy, he's carefree, he's loving life. And there was a time in my life where I'm not gonna say I wasn't happy. I was like I woke up and was at least happy once a day, which is a blessing in itself. But I was just like, why can't I be carefree anymore? Why can't I put myself first? Why can't I just sit down and play with a dog? But for the first time in what felt like a while, I am starting to feel like that again. And so you bringing back up that little childhood analogy there, thank you for that because I probably needed that today more than I thought. For you, what role does that play? Obviously, there's some sort of significance bringing up your younger self. And I feel like we're focusing so much on the moment you decided to stop playing basketball, but if we set that aside for a moment and focus on now after that decision has been made, what steps are you taking in your life to make sure that young Jamie can be inspired by current Jamie?
Kind of like I mentioned, if, nowadays I find myself in a dark place mentally, and I'm, kind of talking to myself badly. I definitely think back to my old self and think, how would I talk to myself then? Like how, when I talk to myself like that, that's who I'm talking to. I'm talking to my younger self in a way because I'm the same person I've always been. Um, and so, I think one thing, kind of how I said when I was younger, I really cared so much about what other people thought of me. While I still have moments where I do consider other people's thoughts, I think I've done, a really good job nowadays of sticking to myself and being true to myself. And really, not letting social media and society and my friends and people I want to be friends with kind of dictate what I do and who I am. I like to be authentic and myself. And I think it's taken a long time to get to that point. But so much of my journey and my life as a therapist where I practice and preach authenticity and being yourself and not falling into the status quo, I think, kind of just reinforces my own ability to do that in my own life. And um, even just looking at myself in the mirror and saying, you got this. Like, I don't think I would have done that when I was younger. I think I would have thought that was cringy, honestly. Um, and I definitely care so much about myself. I've learned to really love myself and, um, take care of myself. And I even will go out, and like get myself a meal by myself. And I know that's kind of like frowned upon, but, just kind of being my own best friend at times. I think I never really growing up thought about myself as my own friend. And I frankly don't know how much I even really cared about myself. And so, really just prioritizing those little moments of talking to yourself and saying you look beautiful and saying you're smart and you're capable is something that I think my younger self would really be proud of and look up to.
Yes, solo dates are so important, and I'm a huge advocate for them. I think I was talking the other day, I was like, whether it's doing your nails, going to the golf course, just go for a walk, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something extravagant if you can't afford it or if you don't want to. For me, it looks like golfing. So just me, a beer, and the golf course, honestly. That's my ideal solo date. But I think a question I was thinking while you were speaking, and again, this might be like a hard switch, but I don't want to forget the question. Obviously, you work a lot with clients. What is one thing that you've learned from a client that you've started to implement in your own life? Maybe, I mean, they say that doctors often make the worst patients, but I argue opposite. I think that doctors give out advice that they wish they heard themselves. So if we flip that around, what is a piece of advice or something that a client has said to you that you're kind of proud that your client has said, and you're like, man, like you needed to hear that yourself. I'm so glad you said that.
I think, one of my patients, told me once that, when negative things happen to us and when things happen that impact us, they leave bruises, but they don't leave scars. And, just the concept of a bruise and how it heals and it goes away eventually versus a scar, which lasts forever and is always there and is ugly. I think that was really huge for me and kind of seeing the difference and not letting so many moments be scars, rather let them, kind of bruise over and affect me, but not, take a toll on my entire life. And as someone who is pretty sensitive and kind of takes things, to the dark side, I think that was really important for me to hear, and that, not everything lasts forever and not everything has to have a huge impact on you as long as you learn from it. And so, yeah, I think that was huge for me, and that was really insightful of the kid to kind of come up with on their own and to kind of reflect on. And that was something that we had a big conversation about. And even, now I just kind of think about that analogy of bruises and scars and, not letting, like I said, things kind of take a toll on your entire life and existence. Rather, just let it be something that you notice and you grow from and you take time to reflect on.
Yeah, that is awesome. I did not expect that. So thank you for sharing. And I think it had to be a proud mentor moment when the person came up with it by themselves. You know, you're like, come on, yes, I do know what I'm doing. No, but I appreciate the fact that you can then, because that was the part of the question, that then you can take that advice yourself, right? Like you understand that you're there to help, but for some reason that stood out to you and you needed to hear that as well. When you get a bruise, because I like to play this game a lot, you put ice on it, right? Obviously, for you, ice is positive affirmations. It is not getting sucked into the highs too much or the lows too much. It is relying on your inner circle. Um, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it's fair to assume that your twin brother is in your inner circle. What was his response to your what we'll call the bruise moment, where you decided to kind of stop playing basketball and focus on you? Was he What was his response to that? And I guess, for lack of better words, this is going to sound funny, was he your bag of ice?
I honestly don't think he was surprised. It's funny because growing up, we used to go in the gym and we would play like horse or pig against each other, and he would always beat me, always. And I would be so upset. I would cry and I felt horrible about myself. And, it was just funny because I would always go into the games thinking I was going to win and I didn't. And even just our work ethics growing up, I really hated playing basketball. Like for practice, I didn't want to work out. I kind of just wanted to go in and like give it my best shot, and then come home and not work on it. And Buddy was the polar opposite. He was in the gym every day for multiple hours, even twice a day. And same with Jimmy. And so I think they always knew that I didn't really love it, and so when I did tell them, I think they were just like, especially Buddy, you should do what you want, and this should be, kind of your decision, and we're proud of you, and we're okay with you doing whatever you want. And I'm definitely someone who wears my emotion on my sleeve. I am fully transparent about the way I'm feeling, and I think they knew while I was in high school and kind of when I had made the decision to go to U of R that I wasn't 100% in it. Um, and I think that helped me kind of be able to make that decision because it was something that people already kind of had an understanding of. Um, and I'm just thankful that, I didn't really get any backlash from him. It was more just like, it wasn't really a big deal.
Yeah, you're still my sister afterwards, just like you're my sister beforehand. I'm still gonna smoke you in the gym if you ever want to play horse again, but maybe
Yeah.
I just won't ask you to play again
Yeah.
for a little while, type thing. But yeah, no, I love that. So
Yeah.
maybe rather than necessarily just be, as I poorly worded it, your bag of ice, he kind of he kind of knew beforehand. He kind of saw it, but he knew it was important to let you figure it out on your own time, which I think is kind of a wise decision in this sense. Obviously, there are times where you need to speak up, but um, yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm always curious of the sibling relationship, because are you the youngest or is he the younger?
So I'm
Okay,
2 minutes
so we
older.
can't relate on that sense, but you're in the group of younger siblings, so it is always your older siblings don't let you win, or the ones that are close to your age. So I can totally relate on frustrations and whatnot, but the moment that for some it's different telling your parents than it is telling like your siblings. Like you're more worried of your parents' response, but you're more concerned about if your siblings will treat you any differently, at least in my experience, right? I was like, okay, I know my parents are going to tell me they love me. I know they're going to be there in support, but I'm closer with my siblings, so it's like I know exactly how they're going to treat me. I don't want them to stop beating me when we play. Like I don't want them to be any different, but I want them to understand that like the reason I get upset or the reason I might not talk to him or ignore him or talk to him too much is because of how I'm doing mentally, not because I'm pissed because they beat me on the soccer field. So I'm glad that that relationship for you is still there and healthy. But I want to open up the floor to you here a little bit. I know we focused a lot on your experience with the decision, the before and after of basketball. Is there anything in your mental journey that you just want people to be aware of, so if they notice it themselves, they can start to see the warning signs, or they have better tools to handle certain situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, in my experience, one of the things that really helped open my eyes to understanding, where I was at mentally was not only how I was doing in my sports career, but how I was doing academically, how I was doing as a friend, um, how I was doing as a daughter, and so many other identities that I have. I just feel like all of those were affected, and I could totally see that basketball was having an effect on, not only my playing time or my stats, but so many other parts of my life. And I think it's really important to look at those other areas of your life and assess, how is this going for me? Am I doing the best I could be doing? And if I'm not, what's getting in the way of that? And really, every day just taking time to self-reflect and looking into your own self and hearing, maybe those thoughts that you have that you don't want to hear, and exploring those ideas you have that maybe are a little bit scary to you. And I would definitely, first and foremost recommend, everyone have a therapist. I think being in therapy is so important, whether or not you believe you have anything wrong necessarily, quote unquote. Um, I just think, being able to talk to someone, you can sometimes realize, you do have some stuff that you need to unpack, and it may not always just come to light in your day to day life. Um, and I think you can learn so much in therapy. Like we've said, positive self-talk, positive affirmations, just learning how to engage in overall um what's it called? I'm blanking on it. Self-care. I don't know why that took me so long to think, but that kind of relates to positive affirmations and positive self-talk. But really, taking yourself out and even, taking the 10 minutes to do your skincare routine. Like, I think there was a time when I was on the basketball team where I didn't even really have it in me to brush my teeth at night sometimes. And like, that might not seem to someone like a really big deal, or like it doesn't seem like, that important, but like just taking your time to brush your teeth and brush your hair and do those little things, like it does add up, and it's a form of self-care, and like you should take the time to do that for yourself, even if that's the only thing you do. um and just staying true to yourself. I feel like society nowadays, it's so easy to get wrapped up in, body image and what am I doing that, what am I doing wrong, and kind of those negative thoughts that can come with kind of seeing someone else. And I feel like, especially when I was on the basketball team, I always looked at the girls who were starting over me and doing better than me and wondering, what could I be doing more? Like, should I be doing more? And really just recognizing that you're having those thoughts, and trying to do something about it, whether that's talking to your coach or, talking to your therapist. Really just utilizing the sources that you have, and trusting, trusting those, and that you have to rely on someone, because you can't do everything on your own. And um, you have to be an advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I like to say that self-care and therapy are the fruit and vegetables of mental health. You have to eat your carrots and your peas. I'm struggling for vegetables at the moment, but you have to eat your vegetables to keep your body healthy, right? Drink your water. Why not do it for your mental health? Because your body is going to slow down at some point, whether it's athletics or just in general, but your brain will always be there with you. But Jamie, are you ready for the final episode, or the final question of this episode?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
If there's one person right now, like today, in the entire world who you think needs a hug, who would you give it to and why?
I was gonna say my younger self, but I think what I would rather say is people who, for athletes, and people who aren't athletes, who are, struggling with mental health, and don't feel like they have the resources or self ability to kind of advocate and for themselves, and to get help. I think I would really, give those people a hug and tell them, it's okay that you're going through this, and there will be an end, but you have to advocate for yourself, and only you can really understand what you're going through. And um, I think that it's really important to recognize that and be able to get help, but it's not always easy. It's not that easy. There are a lot of different factors, like finances and location and accessibility and a variety of things. And so I would really just give hugs, especially to, I think, younger female athletes, who don't have a window of support, or a corner of people that they know have their best interests. And um, whatever external or internal force is kind of affecting them, I would just say, you matter. And tomorrow's a new day, and this isn't going to last forever. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the authentic, honest answer. And we appreciate your vulnerability throughout the episode to kind of let us into your world. I know that's a big move and a big step forward, even probably for you personally. So, again, thank you for that. I know so many people listening to this episode have some wonderful advice. Maybe they wanted to find out a little bit more about you and your decision to step away from the game. So that was a huge answer for them. And whether it's the answer they wanted or not, again, we are proud of you for sticking by your answer, putting yourself first, and really just continuing to spread that light and joy that you kind of inherited from such a young age. So thank you so much for joining us for the Make Mental podcast. You are part of the Make Mental family for life now, whether you like it or not. And we are so excited to see if you decide to go back and get another degree, or if you make it into the sports world with mental health and interest or not. We're just excited to see your journey, and watch you continue to put yourself first, so that way you can help others. So thank you one last time, Jamie, for joining us here on the Make Mental podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Caleb. And I hope whoever sees this, if you have any questions or you want to talk more, I'm more than happy to do so. Please reach out to me on Instagram. My username is just Jamie Boeheim. I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find me anywhere. Please reach out. And I'd love to help in any way I can.